Welcome back to Nick Lenz Comic Corner Classic, less known classic. This is episode number 2544 and episode number 2438. First up, we're reviewing issues of Ghost Rider, some issues of Markham Presents, along with the final miniseries discussed for Wear It by Night. For Ghost Rider, Volume 3, we're discussing these issues here. Issues 13 and 25, along with issues 29 and 30. Which, kind of in a way, finishes up basically the first 31 issues of this run. Now, issue 13, the biggest thing with this issue is the return of Johnny Blaze. For the first time since New Defenders number, I think it was 147, I believe it was. That was his last appearance prior to this very book. He had been sort of hidden prior to this book, and here he shows up, and he thinks that for these early issues here, he thinks, very stupidly so, that Dan Ketch's Spirit of Vengeance is Zorthos. He thinks it is. Like, don't touch the symbol. He thinks it's Zorthos. And he starts shooting him. And, well, this is not like a good alliance. Basically, a friendship basically started with basically having this guy trying to murder you in this very first issue here. Yeah, it's quite something of the fact Johnny Blaze does this. Yeah, we also see the first appearance of Snowblind. Which, look at this guy. He looks like basically a more serious version of Snowflame from DC. The guy only appeared 10 times. I'm not kidding about that. The guy only appeared, well, not only issue 13, but he returned in issue 21, 23, and 24, and then returned after Howard Mankey left the book. So there were a handful of times Howard Mankey run in and just, then the replacement, I brought him back as a recurring villain for reasons. And also, this is still part of the Death Watch saga. Yes, I refer to the Death Watch saga because, well, there's a lot of issues for this book. Now, it kind of gets wrapped up by issue 24, especially since the issues later on involve Hobgoblin getting involved. This, of course, is Jacob Macendale Hobgoblin, and Spider-Man gets involved in this stuff too. Yes. And in case you're curious, and of course, also Johnny Blaze was want to call it the Blackout, one of his old primary villains of this run. Yeah, he actually makes a return in issue 14, first time since issue 9. Then he pops up after these two issues here. He later appears part of the event Rise Midnight Suns after issue 14, 15, and 25. And it's become very sporadic afterwards. Yep. And then by issue 15, we deal with an organization known as HEART. Humans engaged in ritual terrorism. Yeah, they make their return in this book. Yeah, this was actually the first appearance since issue 9. Well, they did appear in issue 10. This was a one-off return for them, and they return one more time after this in issue 33. I'll talk about that in our comic corner. Yep. And then, of course, Johnny Blaze and Dan Ketch briefly work together. And then Hobgoblin shows up in issue number 16, with Spider-Man make a cameo at the end of the issue. Hobgoblin last appeared back in Darkhawk number 3. And the way Spider-Man explains it, he's been chasing Hobgoblin for quite a while. Like, he went to California, he went all over the place to chase Hobgoblin. So basically, this is part of like a storyline where, yeah, Spider-Man chasing after Hobgoblin. Yep. And it forms like a really good two-parter. Though, of course, Hobgoblin later shows up in the pages of Moon Knight, which I'll discuss that later review. Yeah. So, yeah, and Spider-Man's here. Is he here for 2 issues? Yes, only here for 2 issues, and then he's gone for the book. And Johnny Blaze, after issue 18, is absent for a few issues. Plus, you gotta love Nelson Dick's artwork. We have this shadowy figure appears in the book. Yeah. Then Vista shows up in issue number 19. Yep. We also have first appearance of a character named Suicide. Suicide himself, well, it's like he appears from 1920, appears 2 more issues after this, and then he next appears in the Wolverine Best There Is book as like a recurring villain. And that's the last see of the guy. Yeah, and also he also was fighting this guy called Zodiac, who returned to this issue. Yeah, Zodiac himself is a minor villain in this book. He only appears a handful of times in this book. Yeah, and this book is his death. Yeah, they kill him off this issue. This was the first appearance in issue 12. And then 21, of course, we have the first appearance of Michael Balinido. Who is this guy? He is known as Vengeance. Well, he became his Vengeance 2 years later. Yeah, he is basically like a side Vengeance character, who is a very popular character, who later got a pretty long-running feature in the pages of Marcon Presents. Yeah, he actually had a feature in the book that was one of the last features of the book before it got canceled. Yeah, it's like, if you're a fan of this guy, it's like, yeah, this is a guy who appeared in Marcon Presents and appeared in a few other books. His last known appearance was in Ghost Rider Vengeance Forever, a one-shot that came out just last year. Yeah, that was his most recent appearance, publication-wise. Yeah, and of course, there's a woman named Linda Will, who's, well, she make a return here. Her last appearance, part of this very issue, is back in issue number, well, she basically is part of these few issues here, which leads to a wrap-up of the recurring Death Watch storyline. Yes. By issue 24, of course, they kind of in a way wrap up the Death Watch storyline. Because he gets killed off there, kind of. Yeah, and that's the last we see of him. Well, until he pops up in Spirits of Vengeance. Actually, we got that one done. So, yeah, he appears like a few more times after this, like a total number of, well, he next pops up in Spirits of Vengeance. I've discussed 2 appearances already. He appears like a grand total of 4 more times after this, and then he next appears in the pages of New Avengers. Yes, seriously. And from that point forward, I had pretty much reviewed everything else after that, his last appearance in the 90s. So for him, anyways, there's not much else to talk about him, but yeah, 24 is kind of the end of the saga involving Death Watch until he gets revived. Yeah. And then 25, of course, it's like double-sided issue, first appearance of a group known as The Firm, who appear for a handful of comics. Yeah, they appear in this issue here in return for a handful of issues afterwards, and that's the last 2 of them. Yep. 25 is definitely a good issue. Ron Rag does a great job with the artwork. But here's kind of the thing. After 25, then we have 3 issues I'm skipping over, which is basically 26, 28. 26, 27 is a 2-part crossover with X-Men. Crossover issues 8 and 9 of that series. 28 is part of the Rise of Midnight Suns crossover. As for 29 and 30, 29 and 30 feel like side stories to Rise of Midnight Suns, which for some reason that the trades keep skipping these 2 issues for some strange reason. I don't know why, but they do. It is quite baffling to say the least. Yes. And they guest star Wolverine and Beast of the X-Men. But first appearance group known as Next Wave. Yeah. But these issues here feel like side stories to the epicness that is the Rise Midnight Sun story. It's like, oh, let's give the book basically 2 issues off of the story, and yeah, and let's have also with Nightmare in this issue. But they feel like side stories. That's what it feels like. And then basically we look at the book properly going into issue 32. Which is just right after the events of that crossover. Yeah. But you could say that those two issues led into 32. Yeah, but these issues overall are really, really good. Yep, not a bad issue this much. I'll give these issues roughly a 9 out of 10. Next to discuss is quite interesting. It is Marvel Comics Presents issues 90 to 97. Why am I stopping at 97 instead of continuing further? Because this forms a 8-part story arc where basically you have Dan Catch teamed with Cable. Yep. Which was actually printed part of a one-shot called, I think it was like The Servants of Dead, I think it was. Servants of the Dead. It's basically the group known as the Grateful Undead. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like, yeah, let's bring in the super serious Cable, a guy known for dealing with like sci-fi stuff and future time travel stuff. Let's have these two take on zombies for 8 issues. But I found the issues were quite fun. Now, you might be thinking, did Howard Mankey write these issues? Oh, heck yes. He did. And interesting enough, when it comes to these issues, this starts off basically a regular feature for the book. Yes. A regular feature for the book. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, yeah. It begins a long-running feature of the book that continues into issue 146. Mm-hmm. Yep. But overall, really good stuff here. I love it. Yep. I mostly start with that issue. Still got a little while to go before I cover the Ghost Rider issues for Marvel Presents. Definitely. Mm-hmm. But yeah, that's going to be pretty much it for particular view. Next up is going to be, actually before this, we're not done. We're not done. I want to make a mistake again. So, next up, we're not wrapping up here just yet. So, next up is going to be The Dead of Night, Wearer by Night. Yes, the most recent Wearer by Night miniseries released to date. Yeah, this is the max version Wearer by Night, where it's like bloodier, like lots of gore, and it's called In the Blood. Written by Dwayne Straczynski, artwork by Mariko Swin. It's a very interesting miniseries where, like, Jack Russell's married and he gets a daughter in this book, and they all want to kill him and protect the baby. Now, from what I've read, this miniseries is not canon to the main continuity of Marvel Comics, but some Max books are and some books are not. This one, from what I can tell, is not canon at all. It's a completely different universe. But it's the most recent thing to cover for Wear by Night, aside from the recent stuff, which that might be, I might cover in the future. But this was a pretty decent miniseries. But for Dwayne Straczynski, now I've read some of the stuff before, aside from this book. He usually is pretty good at the stuff he writes. This book is just a bit lower, a bit weaker than some of his other books. But I'm gonna give the book roughly a 9 out of 10. It's pretty decent for what it is. But that's also the end of the Wear by Night stuff. Well, unless you got the recent stuff. I still gotta review those, but I'm gonna hold off on that. So, that is the last of the miniseries to cover. So, this is a definite gonna replace it. The thing that's gonna replace Wear by Night is gonna be Howard the Duck. Yep. Looking forward to doing that. Yep. But yeah, that's been pretty much it, particular view. Next up is going to be 100 Girlfriends. Okay, next view. Bye.